Hi everyone, I want to show you the next steps of the Abstract Techniques Portrait project through a video because it'll be easier to show this video rather than demonstrating 4 different times. So I have another reference photo here. I've started doing the outline drawing because remember the first step of the project is to put your name and period on the back of the paper. And then second step is to do your center lines, finding exact center here and here. So it matches the center lines on your photo. And then you draw quadrant by quadrant each section of the photo larger into your drawing paper. And so I've already finished doing my outline. There's no shading whatsoever, just outline. What you can do if you would like to is sort of give yourself a little bit of guideline here and there of where maybe shadows come in, something like this, but nothing too drastic, nothing too dark, because you're going to be putting those shadows in with watercolor paint later. But if you'd like to give yourself a little guideline of where those shadows are going to go, you can lightly sketch an area in, just don't shade it in with your pencil. The next step, which is the 4th step of your project, is to erase your grid lines, which I have not done yet. So I'm going to do that now and make sure that I can't see those grid lines at all anymore before I start putting rubber cement on, which is the next step after erasing grid lines. So my grid lines originally were put in very, very lightly, and so they're erasing nicely. You can't see the grid lines anymore once I erase them. Hopefully everybody put their guidelines in nice and light also, so that once you erase, you can't see them anymore. Okay, once you've erased your grid lines, if there's any spots where you need to go back in and kind of redraw where things got erased, you can go ahead and do that very lightly. Usually it doesn't make too much of a difference. The other thing you want to do is if you see any smudges, you want to also erase your smudges. Smudges happen a lot when you're brushing the eraser shavings off your paper. But we don't want to have any smudges on here because when we put the rubber cement on, we want to have nice, clean, white paper in all the areas that we want to stay white in the final product. Okay, so I erased all my smudges. I'm just going to get my eraser bits off the paper. And now I'm ready to go in with rubber cement. Now, the rubber cement is for masking all the areas of your portrait that you want to stay white. So anything that looks very, very light in your photo, you can go in with rubber cement and sort of paint it on so that when the watercolor colors go onto your paper, the paper will stay white wherever you have put the rubber cement because it acts as a resist. It resists the watercolor. Here's the rubber cement that we're using. Each table is going to have 2 bottles to share. So I'm just going to open it up. We are not going to use the brush that it comes with. Okay, so what we're going to do when you open up your bottle is make sure that you wipe all the rubber cement off of the brush that comes with the cap. Okay, I'm even scraping this metal part of the brush against the edge of the bottle to make sure I get all that rubber cement off. Okay, then each table will have some paper towels. Just lay your cap with the brush attached to it on a paper towel and put it down on the table so it doesn't stick to the table. And instead of using that, each student gets one Q-tip, and you're going to use this, which has a smaller point to it than this large brush so that you can get small areas in. And also you'll be able to share the one bottle because everybody will have their own Q-tip. Okay, so I'm going to just do some areas. I'm not going to do like her whole forehead except for a little shadow here and a little shadow here. It looks very light, but I think what I'll do is I'll avoid painting most of the forehead, but I will just do a center bit on the forehead to mask so that you can't, get any paint. If I by accident go on there, I can't get any paint in that middle section. Okay, so I just dipped my Q-tip into the rubber cement, and it's very sticky and it will get kind of stringy. So just be careful when you take it out. And I'm starting to apply it right here in the middle of the forehead where I want the paper to remain white after I'm finished painting. And remember with the rubber cement, if you were here for the demonstration that I did for your class, that after you're completely finished with painting, and you know you're not going to be painting anymore on your project, you simply use your finger to rub the rubber cement off. Because once it's dry, it is not permanent, it is temporary, and it rubs right off just with your finger. So I'm putting a nice thick layer of rubber cement on here because I realized with the first project example that I did, that some areas I put it on in such a thin layer that it didn't fully resist the watercolor. So having a nice thick application just like this will ensure that I've got good coverage and the watercolor won't go through. Okay, then next I'm going to grab some more, and I want to make sure I put some right at the tip of the nose where the light hits, and a little bit up just the center of the nose up here, kind of meeting up with the highlight on the forehead. Okay, I want to make sure I don't get any rubber cement in on the sides of the nose because the sides of the nose are always in shadow since they are an indentation on the face. Everything that sticks out on the face is usually in highlight. Everything that indents on the face is usually in shadow. Okay, so I just have a little bit of rubber cement along the tip of the nose and up the bridge, middle of the bridge of the nose. Carefully, I'm going to grab just a little bit of rubber cement. It gets stringy, so you can see I'm kind of going like this to get the strings. I'm going to put a little tiny dab, just a tiny dab, in the iris and pupil of the eye because there is a white highlight in the photo. On each eye, there's always that little reflective highlight. So I just put a tiny dot of rubber cement in the colored part of the eye. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Just dip it a little bit in, kind of go like this until all the strings gather up on the Q-tip, and then do a tiny dot like that, and that's perfect. There is a little bit of the whites of the eyes that need to be protected from paint, so I put that right there in that corner, a tiny bit right here in this corner of the white of the eye, and then again here, I don't need to re-dip my Q-tip because I've got plenty on there for these tiny little spaces. And then one more right here. And that should be perfect for masking those white parts of the eyes that need to stay nice and light. There is a bit of shadow right in here, but I can always go back in later to put that shadow in after I've rubbed the rubber cement off. So any area that you masked that got masked by accident or that you masked a little too much, you can always go back in and fix it later because remember the rubber cement rubs off and then you can add paint or other drawing media to fix those areas. And then I see also on my photo a little bit of, on the bottom lip, there's a bit of highlight. So I'll take a little more rubber cement and just dab in a little bit of cement for the bottom lip. I see I spread it a little too much right here, so I can take my fingernail and just kind of move it up a little bit like this. And that kind of fixes the spreading, okay? So feel free to use your fingernail, or if you don't have fingernails, use the other end of your Q-tip and just kind of move the rubber cement where you want it to actually go, okay? I see a little bit of highlights here on the tip of the ears. I'm not going to go overboard with my highlights, just a little bit here and there where I really want the white of the paper to be showing later when I'm finished painting. And I think I'll do some little bits of highlights in the hair, flowers of the hair. I think her hair is actually twisted into flower shapes, but I will probably, when I go in with paint, I will probably just make those actual colorful flowers instead of it looking like her hair. So I'm just dabbing a little bit of highlights into the spots of the hair where I think a highlight would look good. And remember, if it's a little too, if the application of rubber cement's a little too thin, it will not resist the paint as well. So if it looks a little thin, you can always go back over your spots with just a bit more rubber cement to make it thicker. So I just had to do those couple little spots a little bit more, and now they look good. All right, and then may want to do just a few little spots here, like on her collarbone area, like maybe a highlight here and a highlight here. Can't see it in the camera. There we go. So I just did a highlight right here. I'm going to do a little bit of a highlight right here. Just a bit right here. Maybe a little bit here. Not too much, because what I can do with this area is just use a lot of water with the watercolor to make very light colors wherever it looks light here on her shoulder and collarbone area. But just to really have some light spots, I'll put a few areas of rubber cement. And I think that's pretty much it for her. I don't want to do too much rubber cement. She just needed a bit on the forehead, nose, and bottom lip, and a little bit on the ears. Of course, I did a little bit in the hair, but I don't think she really needs any on the chin because you can see in the photo that the upper half of her face is much lighter than the lower half of her face. She does not need any rubber cement in the neck area. That's all pretty dark. So she's pretty much finished with the rubber cement. And once you're finished with the rubber cement, just toss your Q-tip in the trash because it can't be used again. Once that rubber cement dries on the tip, it's not usable anymore. And then make sure you put your original brush and cap back on top and screw it nice and tight because we don't want this rubber cement inside the bottle to dry out. And that is it for this step. We have to wait for the rubber cement to dry before we can start using watercolor.